Hey, Jenny.
Hello.
Hello. Here we are, ready to record another episode of the Woven Podcast. Yeah, this will be a fun one. We were just chatting before we hit record, kind of shoring up the topic, and I'm very, very excited about what we're going to talk about. And this is a tip of the hat to you, Jenny.
Thanks.
Well done.
Accept.
So this was all Jenny's idea.
Mm.
So if it's terrible,
Right.
I'm just kidding.
That's right. Coming back to me.
No, I loved it so much. I had pitched a different idea. And then, well, first of all, like, if you're just joining us on the Woven Podcast, like, we know a general direction that we want to take this podcast and this movement and all of this. But we are committed to making this like very organic, like you're discovering it as we're discovering it. We're kind of building this woven thing as we go, and you're along for that journey. So while we have a lot of topics and ideas planned out in advance, sometimes we're like, let's just leave space to see whatever it is God wants to make happen, whatever it is organically, it's going to pop up, and we'll leave space to tackle that. And today was kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I pitched an idea. I was like, I really think we should talk about this. It'll set up the nice series coming up. Then I paused and I said, yeah, I posed a question. I said, what is the number one skill or ability we would want the woven community to develop? What's the one thing? And I had something in mind. And Jenny, tell him your answer.
My answer was service.
And I said, that's the best answer I've ever heard.
I kind of felt like I was on a game show just then.
Ding, ding.
The answer
you
is
win.
Service. Yeah.
The answer is service. It was such a good answer that I almost didn't even bother to give mine because I'm like, nope, that's it. We absolutely need to talk about that. Because that's at the core. It's really at the core of why we started Woven. Out of so many things, right? What can we give away? How can we serve? How can we use our experience as coaches to build a community of people that we could help and have help each other and have help us and lead each other home?
Yes.
Instead of trying to play the role of expert or guru, because we don't even want to pretend to be that person.
Right.
We want to be free from that. So, yeah, we're going to talk today about serving, the ability to serve.
Yes.
So I'm excited to get into this topic because it is fantastic.
Okay.
Jenny, I like your, the backstory on this for you, because you shared a story a long time ago and you shared it again today before we got on the podcast about something instilled in you by an early coach or mentor in your life around service that's a part of your day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's a great place to start, just your story with serving and how it became so big in your life.
Right. Yeah. So I did want to share that. And as I spoke the word service as my answer,
service,
I think it's such it's a word to me that evokes an emotion, even when I say it. And I'm just going to say it's a very unsexy word. It's like service. Come on.
Yeah.
Like I've done enough. That's and so it even when I say it now and I truly mean it, it still evokes that little spark in my heart of like, really? You want me to give more? So take that to I was at one of the hardest places in my life, and I had this beautiful mentor come in and offer to treat me as her daughter. And her name is Anne. I just want to honor her with her name. She's passed away, but she taught me some of the most beautiful lessons I've ever learned that I still use and pass on. And so I remember when we started to work together, she's like, okay, here's what you're going to do. And very rarely did she tell me what to do. It was more letting me discover my own truths and answers to things. But she's like, this is what I want you to do. And she's like, I don't even want your feet to hit the ground when you wake up in the morning, but literally I want you to slide down onto your knees and ask God how you can be of service. And I was like, what? No way. No way, lady, is what I thought. Because you don't know what I'm going through, and you don't know how much I give and serve. And I thought, that's, I was very cynical. I'm sure I nodded politely, but in my heart, I was like, I'll never do that. Or in my heart, I was like, if I do it, I'll never really mean it. And so, I think I've mentioned this in earlier podcasts. Anne is also who taught me act your way into right thinking, right? And so my thinking was not pleasant about doing that, but I did it out of sheer honoring her request. And I'm going to tell you, when I started it, I didn't mean it. I didn't feel it. It was like, check it off, donezo. Get on with my day. People serve me. But slowly, as I acted my way into right thinking, I began to get very specific about that. So fast forward to, gosh, you guys, that was probably like 10 years ago. Fast forward 10 years this morning. I don't think I've stood the last 10 years. I go straight to my knees. And now my prayer are very much like, hey, God, would you help me be of service to so-and-so? I know I'm speaking to them today. Would you help me be of service to the class I'm coaching today? And so I get very specific in who I know I'm going to interact with. And then I usually ask for a lot of guidance because I know other people are going to come into my life that day. And so that has changed my entire outlook on my day and my entire outlook on the people that I come in contact with. And I wasn't eager to do it. So that's how it came about.
That's fantastic that has stuck for 10 years. And even still, this very morning, that's how you started your day. I love that you were honest about the process of weren't feeling it.
No.
Maybe didn't even want to do it a little bit, but out of honoring her, you did it and you've acted your way into right thinking. Because I think wanting to truly selflessly serve might take that for some people, right?
Yes, yeah.
Just you need to do it, and the more you continue to do it, like muscle you exercise, you'll get better at it. It'll become a part of your life, right?
Right.
What were some of the early on? What were some of the things that you would do to be of service? Did you wait for certain opportunities to pop up or present themselves in the day? Or did you think, especially early on, all right, I need to be strategic about thinking of one person or one event where I can be of service, especially getting started?
Yeah. And the answer is no. I did not have any plan in mind. At the time, I was coaching full-time and being a general manager at a CrossFit gym. And so that prayer began my morning. And then it also got echoed before I got out of my car. And so as I was entering into my workplace, I was very much aware that I was going to try to serve whoever I saw that day. And so nothing changed. I didn't create new contacts or new meetings with people. But what it did, I think, was it gave me a different set of lenses to look through. I also carried with me that quote, and I know we've all seen it on Instagram and stuff. It's like, something to the effect of be kind to everyone because you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I think the ability to serve came from that empathy of I was going through a hard time. And so I began to, instead of being like, oh, just let me get through this day, I began to be like, oh man, I wonder who I'm talking to right now is going through a hard time. I didn't need to know the hard time, but I thought maybe, I don't know, just a smile would help their day. That was my act of service. So I didn't create anything new. I don't think I had it in me because I was kind of obstinate, if that's the right word. I was obstinate about it. And so I just, I'm talking millimeter step, tried to serve in my heart. So,
yeah. Yeah. That's great because, you know, not going through the steps of like trying to make a plan, like, well, I'll be here today, so I'm going to serve this person in this way, and I'm going to look for this specific opportunity. Number one, it potentially allows for a much more organic approach to it, where you then allow situations and events to unfold and certain people maybe to cross your path that you couldn't have intended or orchestrated if you wanted to.
mm-hmm.
But that was the person or the event or the situation that needed your service the most. And I think that's just part of like the impromptu nature of a life led by the Spirit. I could barely get that out. A life in flow, right? Right. And then it also reminds me of this idea of kind of what we focus on expands. If we just have the focus in the morning to get down on our knees and say, God, how could I be of service today? All of a sudden we have kind of our radar up and we're focusing on, all right, where are opportunities to serve? And I think opportunities could pop up that might have always been there, but maybe we just didn't tune into them or weren't aware of them, or maybe that person, because we didn't set the intention to serve.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden those opportunities, they didn't materialize out of nowhere. Maybe they were always there to some degree, but because we were never intentional about serving, we didn't recognize them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking two things. I was thinking, anybody listening, I can go back to if someone would have told me to say, God, how can I be of service? I would have been like, I'm not talking to God. I don't know who you are, but I'm not at that place. So it doesn't even have to be that prayerful, quote unquote. It could be like, help me be of service. Yeah. I think it's the intent that goes out from your heart. So I didn't want anyone to shy away thinking it had to be those words.
Good call.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
That's what Anne told me to say. But I think it's in the process, and the kneeling, that to me comes from a place of honest humility. Whether or not you're like kneeling, but you feel like you're kneeling before God or the universe, and so to speak, or something. I do think the kneeling brings me back to a posture that is physical but also heartfelt. So I wanted to just make sure and not have people feel that it had to be those words. It's the intent behind it. So I wanted to say that. And then I wanted to say, too, my service, I think one of the big things that we talked about before we started to record was that a true service has to be from the inside out. So it has to come from within my heart and radiate out. And one of the ways I have found that to be the most impactful is the more vulnerable and authentic I can be, the more of service I am.
That's good.
I think sometimes when someone's telling maybe this new concept, be of service, what? And so you kind of like, I thought about when I was a Girl Scout, I was a Girl Scout for a little while, and there was this little saying, and it was like, "Do something nice for somebody that no one knows about." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
then to me, that's outside in, because you're looking. Or as a little kid, I would look. I'm going to be super vulnerable with myself. So this is what I would do, because I'd be like, I was a real rule follower. I'd be like, I have to do something nice, and nobody can know. And so I remember so many times, like the soap dish, and we would have like a bar of Dove soap, and it'd be all
Yeah.
cloggy. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'd clean out the soap dish. I'd be like, I'm doing something really nice for someone else, and nobody knows. And then I would check it off. And I would never try to really have the experience of wanting to help someone. I know as a little child, but I think service in an inauthentic way can feel
Mm-hmm.
like a duty versus
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, honestly, I'm serving selfishly. I'm serving for myself.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
I just said a lot, but those were
Mm-hmm.
the things that were kind of coming in. It's like, it doesn't have to be the exact words I said. I do suggest being on your knees.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's I've learned the more authentic I am and real and vulnerable, the more my service is received as just that, instead of a checklist or trying to make me feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a real trap that people could fall into, even like unwillingly, right? They may not be aware they're falling into the trap of serving for selfish reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, you could really run the risk of just tainting or even nullifying your service if you're doing it for what you hope to get back. And I think a lot of culture could be tainted with that. Like the saying, what you sow, you reap. We focus so much on the reaping part.
Mm-hmm.
We forget the intentionality behind the sowing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I'm doing this so I can get something back eventually. Or later, when you find yourself in a position where maybe you haven't reaped the way you hoped you would have, or in the way you hoped you would have, you find yourself saying like, come on now, I've been doing this and I've been doing this and I gave this way and I served in this way. Like, where's mine?
Yes.
It's like, well, that just kind of exposed like the true motivations of your heart.
Yes.
And that's a real challenge.
It is.
Because I think even if we want to talk like primitively from a survival instinct, like giving away of your resources, whether it's your time, your energy, or a physical resource, like that is not necessarily our default state as human beings.
Mm-hmm. True.
Because we don't want to be in a position of lack.
Yeah, right.
And not having enough.
You're surviving. And what is that? The fittest survive or whatever.
Yeah, survival of the fittest,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the mindset switch that for me at least came along with that is realizing that, boy, this isn't necessarily life or death. I'm not going to die or have my family put at risk if I give away of my time or my resources. Mm-hmm. The truth is, especially I'm speaking for myself as 100% privileged white male in the Midwestern United States. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm ridiculously rich.
Right.
Relative, put that in perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can give of my time, my energy, my resources without running the risk of lack or danger or death if I don't receive it all back to me.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a huge shift.
That is.
That's not easy.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as far as overcoming that and working through that shift, like a lot of things, it's something you need to start to do, like you said, start to do, maybe even begrudgingly, so you can act your way into right feeling and notice like, you know what? It felt really good to give that away and not really expect anything in return.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't die.
Yeah.
Nothing bad happened when I gave it away without expecting anything in return. And I think that's a great example of, you know, acting your way into right feeling. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you were saying that, let's say we're serving and our motives aren't quite as honed in and perfected, and people can feel you serving from a neediness.
Oh yeah.
Versus a serving from a completeness.
Yep. Oh, that's good.
You know?
Yes.
I know you guys. Yeah. I know we have all been in a situation where someone is saying something, and in your heart you're like, no, they quite mean that they really do want to help me. I feel their neediness, and their neediness is usually about themselves and maybe a story they're trying to a hole they're trying to fill in their own hearts. Whereas it takes time and lots of practice, but I think ideally serving from a wholeness is felt the way you were intended it to feel for the receiver.
Yep.
And I've learned that the hard way. I've had conversations with people and I've driven away and I thought, oh, I feel slimy. I feel like that was so misinterpreted because it was. Because my motives were way different than what I was actually speaking out. And I knew it. And you know, and then it became a situation several times where I'm like, I need to go back and kind of make an amends or reach out to that person for pure, just, I'm checking on you. I want nothing from you. And I continually learn that. I continually learn to not be needy in my service.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's not only does it make sense, that was massively impactful. I wrote that down right away. Serve, you know, instead of the way you put it, instead of serving out of our completeness. And that's what really hit me because it reminded me of a story you told. And I think it was our 3rd episode when you shared your story. It's still one of my favorite stories you share about having a nemesis in your CrossFit class that you're teaching. And they asked you, hey, can you help me learn how to climb a rope? And your first response was, no, because then you'll beat me. Yes. Yeah, then you'll beat me. You'll be better than me.
Yes.
And then I don't want to take your words. I want you to say them. But what was that phrase that came to your mind that let you knew that you had something to offer without sacrificing yourself?
That's from Anne. Yeah, she would always say, "There's enough Jennie for Jennie."
I love it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, that applies so beautifully here because when it comes to serving, I'm going to go on a limb to say if you are able to listen to a podcast, you are in a position where you are capable to serve someone else in some way, shape, or form.
100%.
Maybe you don't have $1,000 in your pocket to give away to someone, but you can serve. To your point, Jennie, one of the examples you gave when you're first starting is like a smile to someone who might be hurting. Right?
Yeah.
So that idea, there's enough Jennie for Jennie, which I love. I've started to use that for myself.
Oh, good.
And then I've started to use that with the girls I've coached on the softball team this year, because I'm taking a whole bunch of these lessons and applying it in their lives. Because I think sometimes, but when it comes to athletics, boys, we might have talked about this, boys tend to blame someone else when something goes wrong.
Oh, I don't know this. Okay.
It's the umpire, it's the referee, it's the other team, it's this, that, and the other. Generally speaking, and there's always exceptions, girls tend to blame themselves. When something goes wrong. I'm not good enough. I screwed up. People are going to be disappointed in me. So me and my coaching staff have gone to great lengths to try to curb that. But in little thank you notes I wrote to my players at the end of the year, I use that phrase often.
Yeah.
you are more than enough.
Uh-huh.
There's enough you for you.
Yes.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think once you realize that, once you realize your own completeness exactly as you are, you might think you have work to do. God's not done with me yet, which might be true, but there's still enough completeness in you where you are right now to be of service to someone else and not expect an ounce in return.
Right.
That's a huge mindset shift, but it's absolutely 100% true.
Yes. And it's so freeing. It's just so freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so timely.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah.
I want to say one more little thing, because just to reiterate, you are ready. You're complete. You're ready to do this, because there are certain memories etched into my mind that I'll never forget, that are so impactful. And I could share a couple. I want to share one. So when I was at Texas Tech, I was like a freshman, and I had never been around that many people. And if those of you guys that experience a university on campus, it's like hundreds of people are walking from one building to the other at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I was walking in Lubbock across the Texas Tech campus, and just this mass amount of people. And when someone falls, a kind of a little crowd gets around them. Same thing, like if a fist fight breaks out, you kind of crowd around. And I could see kind of some people stopping and looking down. And what had happened was a young girl had fallen. And as soon as I looked at her on the ground, I could tell she probably had something, a handicap of some sort, maybe like cerebral palsy or something, where she wasn't quite as agile as someone who didn't have that. And she was on the ground, and this young man reached down his hand to pick her up. Okay? Like just his hand, to get all teary. And the look on her face, the smile, I'll never forget it. That's it. I mean, man, active service. Look how it's impacted me. I don't know, 20 years later? But he just reached down and picked her up. But the look was pure gratefulness, thankfulness. It was happy. It wasn't sad. And I was just like, man, wow. I can look at that like it was yesterday. So that's one act of service we could do. It doesn't have to be physically picking someone up, but like I say, a smile. I think of another one. I was having a really hard time when my kids were little. And we had in the school cafeteria, they had a little credit card thing, but you had to fill it up. And they were empty. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like a hardship to go pay the $20 for the next round. But I was just having a really hard day as a young mom with 2 kids and just life. And I remember the lady that checked me out, the head of the lunch ladies, was like, here you go, baby. Okay, I still remember that. I was like, I needed for someone to call me baby. I needed to hear some little piece of love from somebody else. I'll never forget it either. But you see how those things can just be huge to somebody. Yeah.
And here you are, in some cases, decades later. Mm-hmm. And you were, for that first story you told about being on campus at Texas Tech, you were just a bystander.
Yes.
You weren't even the direct recipient.
No, you're right.
And that event has had a significant impact on your life that decades later we're still talking about it.
Yes.
You never know who your service is going to impact now or in the future.
Yes. Which is a really cool thing about life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is a massive high note. And I think that's a perfect place to end this. Help me be of service. I'm adding that to my daily routine now too.
Okay. Yeah.
That's huge. And a life spent spent in service is a life well lived. I don't care how much you hoard. A life spent in service is a life well lived.
Yeah, 100%.
So good.
Yeah.
Jennie, thank you for leading this conversation and sharing so much. This was super impactful for me. I now know that I am complete enough to serve from a place of completeness. And there's more than enough Brendon for Brendon. So I'm free to serve and give the rest away.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. Makes me happy.
Me too. Me too. Thanks so much, Jennie.
Of course.